You know how it can be in long-term relationships.
Hmm.
Sometimes that initial spark, well, it feels like it might fade a bit,
Hmm.
and maybe the sex life becomes a little less adventurous.
Yeah, familiar, comfortable, maybe too comfortable sometimes.
Exactly. But the good news is it really doesn't have to stay that way. You can
Okay.
actually, proactively make things better, more
And to
exciting.
suit both partners, which is key.
Right. Which brings us to this guidebook you shared. It's aimed specifically at, well, injecting some new energy there.
Yeah, it's called Sex Tips, A Pleasure Guide for Men by Lauren Young. And what's interesting is its angle.
How so?
Well, a lot of advice is often geared maybe more towards women's experiences or just general advice. This one is really for men who want to actively step up, you know?
Step up their game.
Sort of, yeah. But specifically to enhance things for their partner, too. It's full of practical tips to keep things exciting, rekindle things.
Okay, sounds useful. So, our mission today in this deep dive is basically to unpack the 10 main tips from this guide. We want to pull out the stuff that's really insightful, really actionable for, our listeners to think about.
And it's not about pressure, right? Or adding another to-do list.
No, definitely not. More like offering ideas, maybe sparking some conversations, enhancing that connection, and let's be honest, having more fun.
Absolutely. Fun is important.
So, do we dive into the first tip? Blindfolding your partner.
Okay, yeah, the blindfold. It's interesting because it's not just the act itself. The guide talks about what happens neurologically.
Oh, like brain science.
Kind of. When you take away sight, the brain actually compensates. It seems to amplify the other senses.
Ah, right. Like if you're in the dark, you hear every little creak.
Exactly that principle. So touch, the feel of skin, maybe vibrations, even smells, sounds, it can all become much more intense.
So you're dialing up the other senses by limiting one. Makes sense.
And the guide also highlights the anticipation factor.
Oh yeah, the element of surprise. They don't know what's coming next.
Precisely where you're going to touch them, what you might do. It builds this tension, excitement, maybe even a little vulnerability in a good way.
That vulnerability part is interesting. Builds trust, maybe.
I think so. And the guide even suggests, maybe teasing a little while they're blindfolded. Just imagine that build up.
Okay, I can see how that would definitely change the dynamic.
Mm.
All right, tip number 2. Give instructions.
Mm-hmm. Now, this one might sound a bit commanding.
Yeah, a little. Like you're ordering them around.
But that's not really the angle. It's more about tackling that assumption in long-term couples that you just know everything your partner likes already.
Ah, the we've been together forever, I know what they want trap.
Exactly. And that assumption, even if it's well-meaning, can actually stop you discovering new things or realizing old things aren't working anymore.
So it's really about communication, keeping that channel open.
Yes, the guide stresses that desires change. People evolve. What someone loved years ago might not be their favorite now, or there might be new things they're curious about.
And if you don't talk about it, you'd never know. You could just drift apart sexually without realizing why.
Totally. So the guide suggests this collaborative thing, like each partner writes down a few new things they'd like to try.
Oh, I like that. Like a suggestion box.
Sort of. And then you try things from each other's lists. It takes the pressure off one person having all the ideas.
And makes it a team effort, a shared adventure.
Yeah, exactly. That teamwork itself can be really intimate.
Okay, cool. Next up, massage. This sounds, well, pretty universally appealing.
Right. Who doesn't like a massage? But the guide frames it as both relaxing and sexy.
Which makes sense. How does it explain that connection?
It talks about physical tension, stress in the muscles, and how that can actually block the flow of sexual energy.
Okay.
So releasing that tension through touch can actually make it easier to get aroused, to feel pleasure building if you're all tight and stressed.
You can't really relax into the moment. Yeah, I get that.
But, and this is important, the guide distinguishes between a sensual massage aimed at intimacy.
And one that's just meant to make you fall asleep.
Exactly. It actually warns about that you don't want your partner nodding off right before things heat up.
Good point.
Yeah.
So what kind of touch does it recommend?
A mix. Some firmer, deeper touch on those big muscles back, shoulders to work out knots, but also lighter, sort of caressing strokes to stimulate the skin.
Stimulate the nerve endings.
And it suggests not forgetting areas like hands and feet. Apparently, they can be surprisingly sensitive zones.
Hands and feet. Interesting. Okay, moving on to play dress up.
Yeah, this one links directly to role-playing.
Fun, creating a different atmosphere.
Exactly. It's about stepping out of your usual everyday roles. The husband, wife, partner roles.
And the expectations that come with them.
Right. The guide says dressing up even simply, gives you both a kind of permission slip to act differently during sex, maybe be more uninhibited.
A permission slip. I like that framing. It takes the pressure off feeling like you always have to be you.
hmm And if you're maybe a bit anxious about trying something new, stepping into a character can make it feel safer, more like play.
That makes sense. It turns anxiety into fun.
And the guide notes that, yeah, maybe women traditionally have more options or resources for costumes,
Sure.
but it really encourages men to get into it too. It's about the shared fantasy, the willingness to play together.
Gotcha. Okay, next. Talk about fantasies. This feels related, but maybe less about action and more about, well, talking.
Yeah, the guide calls it simple but effective. Adds fun, opens up communication.
How so? I mean, isn't it potentially awkward?
It can be, sure. But sharing fantasies, even just verbally, gives your partner a unique look into your desires, a maybe more adventurous side.
Seeing a different part of them.
Right, and the guide says it deepens emotional intimacy, but also gives practical clues about what really turns each other on. You might be surprised.
I bet. So how do you start? Just blurt it out.
Probably not. The guide advises keeping initial chats light, conversational, maybe not even in the bedroom initially.
Okay, less pressure.
Yeah, just sharing curiosities. Maybe later it becomes a game if you're both comfortable. The key is creating a safe space for it.
Building that trust. Okay, makes sense. What about play a game?
This loops back to that idea that sex should be fun, enjoyable.
Right, not a performance.
Exactly. So the guide suggests intentionally adding playful competition, using strip poker as the classic example.
Strip poker. A bit retro, maybe?
Maybe. But the guide argues it works because the gradual reveal builds anticipation, seduction, creates playful tension.
I can see that. And does it suggest other games?
It does. It says the loser could do something the winner wants, maybe with time limits to add excitement.
Okay, raising the stakes a bit.
Yeah, but it broadens it out. Any game with a winner-loser could work. You could even make a punishment or reward trying a new sex act.
That's a clever way to introduce novelty.
It is. But, crucially, the guide stresses clear rules, and it has to be mutually enjoyable. No pressure, no feeling uncomfortable.
Both people have to be genuinely into the game.
Absolutely. The goal is always shared pleasure and connection. The game is just a vehicle.
Okay, now for one that I think can make people feel a bit exposed. Dirty talk.
It definitely can. But the guide explains its appeal by saying the brain is the biggest sex organ.
Heard that before. Words stimulating the mind.
Exactly. Spoken words, especially sexual ones, can trigger real physical and emotional responses. Hearing certain things.
To get you going.
Yeah.
But doing it yourself, that feels daunting for lots of people. Fear of sounding silly.
Totally. That fear is real.
Hmm.
But the guide gives some good, practical starting points. It suggests starting neutral.
Neutral dirty talk. What's that?
Just saying how good something feels. Like, oh, that feels amazing. Or, I love it when you do that. Or even just, I want you.
Ah, so basically just verbalizing pleasure and desire. Not necessarily crude stuff.
Right. Framing it as encouragement. Positive feedback leads to more of what you like.
That sounds much more manageable.
It does offer cautions, though. Like, maybe avoid excessive swearing or names that could be hurtful. Stick to positive language. Be mindful of how you name body parts.
Sensitivity is key. Check.
And start slow. Gauge your partner's reaction. Build up if you both get into it. Find your shared language.
Okay. Next up, try out a new position. A classic piece of advice.
For good reason. The guide points out how easy it is to fall into routines. You know, the same couple positions every time.
The old reliables.
Yeah. And while they might work, you could be missing out on different sensations, maybe even more pleasure by not exploring.
Trying different angles, different types of stimulation.
Exactly, but it gives a practical tip. Try new positions when you're already pretty aroused.
Oh, good point. Less fumbling and potential frustration if the mood's already high.
Very true. And it emphasizes imagination. The possibilities are endless. Plus, changing location often means changing position inherently.
Like on the kitchen counter versus the bed. Different logistics.
Precisely. And again, it advocates for talking about it. What positions are you curious about? Take turns trying each other's suggestions.
Shared exploration again. Finding what works for both bodies.
That collaborative spirit.
Okay, tip number 9 takes us into equipment territory. Try out a cock ring.
Yeah, this might be new territory for some listeners.
So what's the main point the guide makes about it?
It explains the function clearly.
Yeah.
It gently slows blood flow out of the penis,
Okay.
which helps maintain a firmer, longer-lasting erection.
Right.
And it connects that directly to potentially better stimulation for the partner. A firmer erection can mean more consistent pressure, different
Yeah,
sensation.
like a safe, purpose-built tourniquet effect almost.
Essentially, yes. To maintain engorgement, this can then translate to deeper or more sustained pressure during intercourse. Good for both, potentially.
Okay, that's a clear explanation. Does it address potential hesitation? Some guys might feel weird about it.
It does. It suggests the hesitation is often just about the idea being unfamiliar rather than the actual experience being bad. It
Okay.
frames it simply as a tool.
A tool to help maintain pace, potentially increase partner pleasure.
Exactly. Not something intimidating, just a practical aid if it enhances the experience for both of you.
Got it. And the final tip, number 10, try out a new location.
This one feels pretty straightforward, but potentially high impact.
Yeah, just changing the scenery can add instant excitement, can it?
Absolutely. The guide says the novelty alone can be really powerful, even if nothing else changes. Breaks the routine, taps into that sense of adventure.
And it gives examples.
Loads. Secluded outdoor spots, maybe slightly riskier semi-public places if that's your thing.
Uh-huh.
Different rooms at home you don't normally use, maybe sneaking off at a friend's party, the classic back of the car scenario.
Brings back memories for some, maybe. Creates spontaneity.
Right. It just stresses how many possibilities there are. A simple change of location adds surprise, maybe a little thrill, makes it feel fresh.
Okay, so looking back at all 10 tips, what's the big takeaway from the guidebook, would you say?
I think the core message woven through all of it is about men being active, thoughtful participants in making sex great for both partners.
Moving beyond just focusing on their own experience or feeling like they should just know what to do.
Exactly. It kind of acknowledges those societal pressures or assumptions and offers practical ways to build a more mutually satisfying connection. It's about communication, consideration.
Proactive effort.
Yeah.
Not just assuming things are fine or that it's only one person's job to initiate or make things exciting.
Right. It encourages this shared responsibility for intimacy and pleasure.
So we've covered a lot here in this deep dive.
Yeah.
10 really concrete ideas from Lauren Young's guide. Blindfolds, instructions, massage, dress up, fantasies, games, dirty talk, new positions, cock rings, new locations.
It's quite a range, isn't it? From sensory play to communication tools to physical changes.
And the common thread seemed to be communication, exploration, and engaging the senses, right?
Definitely. A willingness to try things together, talk openly, and focus on shared pleasure, actively creating that connection.
So, for everyone listening, maybe take a moment to think. Which of these ideas kind of sparked something for you?
Mm-hmm. Which ones feel intriguing, or maybe something you'd actually consider exploring with your partner?
And remember, it's not about pressure. It's not homework. It's about opening doors to maybe more discovery, more intimacy.
And hopefully, yeah, a lot more fun together.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
What's that?
Maybe the most exciting parts of sex in a long-term thing.
Yeah.
Maybe they are just outside that comfort zone.
That's a really interesting thought. Like, they're waiting there to be found.
Yeah, but you need that open communication, that playfulness, that willingness to just try something a little different.
So maybe actively shaping your sex life together is where you find those unexpected levels of connection and pleasure you didn't even know were possible.
Something to think about.